Welcome to Session Sunday. Hi guys, it's Jack Edwards, and in today's video we're going to be focusing on breaking down the opposition. But before we get into this week's video, make sure to leave us a like and subscribe, and if you missed last week's video, click on the link above. Okay, so moving into the first part of this week's session, we're going to be focusing on a pattern of play, okay, which is going to be focusing on a third man run to finish and then receiving the ball from out wide to finish as well. But before we get into it, let's have a look at how many players we're working with this week and the equipment that we'll be using. Now, in terms of players for this week, we're going to have 14 outfield players, okay, and then we're going to have our goalkeeper as well. But you can adapt this for more and less players as well. So if you have less players in this area, let's say you had 12 players, you can just take 2 players out of this area here, or you could take 2 of the crosses out if you wanted to as well. If you had more players, you can start to add in defenders if you wanted to as well. So maybe you could even be, once a player's been an attacker, they can then be a defender, okay, in this area to try and defend the cross and try and be a shadow defender when we have the third man run to finish. Now, in terms of the equipment, we're going to be focusing on using balls, bibs and cones. If you have poles, that'd be great to use, obviously to use as mannequins in here. And then further on in the session, when we're trying to use small-sided goals, if you don't have them, you can use poles to set out an area for a goal. Now, in terms of the setup for this part of the session, so from the goal line to where the striker is here, we're going to go 20 yards, okay? And then between the striker here and then the attack midfielder making that third man run, okay? We're just going to go 5 yards to start with, but if you wanted to create a bit more room, you can, because we're focusing on timing our movements, and we're going to go 15 yards to here. So you've got 20 and another 20 here, so you've got 40 yards in total. Now, in terms of the width, okay, so between these 2 players here is going to be 12 yards, okay, so if you're using a full-size goal, it's just 2 yards either side of the goal. Then these players here are going to be 10 yards further away, okay, and then the wide players, okay, try and use as much width as you can, okay, so if you're limited to your width, okay, so let's say if you had your 12 in here, then 10 either side, so you've got just over 30 yards of width in here. If you only add an extra 20 yards, okay, you can just put a wide player 10 yards here and a wide player 10 yards here. But if you had more room, you could go 15 either side and so forth, okay, so you want to try and stretch the pitch as much as you can. And then the distance between these 2 players is going to be 10 yards, okay, so just inside these 2 players ever so slightly. Now, what's going to happen is the ball's going to start here, okay, and players are going to rotate in different ways. The play, it's going to be quite quick, okay, so we're focusing on playing through, making a forward run to score, okay, so we're not focusing on lots of passes, we're focusing on penetrating quickly, so we're going backwards to recycle, and then we're playing forwards quickly, okay, so the play will start here. This player here is going to receive the ball on the back foot to open out, okay, and then play into the striker. So the striker looks to move in towards the ball on an angle where they can receive it and set into the third man runner here, who looks to take the ball into space to finish, okay? As soon as that is finished, these 2 players will move into the box, okay? So we want to see different movements. So once this player is finished here, they may attack the front post. This player can attack the back post, take it out the feet, look to deliver, okay, and then we look to score. So when we're obviously trying to break opposition teams down is when we get the ball wide, we need quality into the box as well. So we're trying to focus on putting that ball in between the 6-yard box and the penalty spot, okay? Is it going to be a low-driven cross? Is it going to be a whip cross? Is it going to be floated in the air for a player to attack, okay? So making sure that we know the players that we're playing the ball into as well, so targeting the right player, and also making sure we're putting it into an area where the players can actually get onto. So if we're attacking the front post, okay, can we look to get pace on the ball for a first time finish? If it's back post, we're going to have to put a bit more loft on it as well so the ball can travel that far. Now, the players' rotations are a little bit different, okay? So this player here will move up to the top, okay? This player here will move to be the striker, okay? The striker, okay, will move to the opposite side, okay? And then the player who made the third man run will go back to where they started here for now, okay? Then once they've been here, so once they have their go in here, they'll then move to this side and go so forth. So the players will end up swapping and going the opposite way, okay? So player at the start who starts it moves to be the passer, okay, who's playing into midfield. The midfielder goes to be the striker, okay, the striker goes back to the start, and then obviously the player who's the third man runner will then go back to their start point, okay? and then it goes the opposite way. Now, the crosses will alternate each side. So when we're going this way, okay, when the ball starts this side, the crosser will be off the left. When the ball goes to the other side, the crosser will be off the right. And these players can rotate as well. What you could also do with the crosses is have a crosser inside. So when they receive the ball, when they have the ball here, they can play a 1-2. Okay, so if they're getting round the defender, have a mannequin in here for them to deliver to the two players in the box. So they're not just getting the ball out the feet, they're working a little bit. Okay, nice quick play to get in behind and then cross the ball. So we'll go through it one more time. Ball starts here, we open out and play. As that comes in, player looks to drop in. Okay, can they look to receive? Set, and we finish. As soon as that's done, ball comes out the feet, players look to rotate in here, gets played in, and then we look to score, and then we go again from the opposite side. We will now move into our first animation before moving on to part 2 of this week's session. Now moving into part 2 of this week's session, we're now moving into the first of our small-sided games. This one is focusing on working the ball through the pitch, okay, to score. Now, in terms of the setup for this part of the session, okay, so from the goal line here, this final third, there's going to be 25 yards of depth, okay. The middle area here, okay, is going to be between 15 and 20 yards. So again, we're going to base it on how much space that you've actually got. So between 15 and 20 yards. 20 yards more ideal, and then this end one is going to be 15. So you've got 25, okay, 20 in here, and then 15, okay? So you're looking at 60 yards, but again, if you need to decrease some of them, you can, and obviously if you're working with younger players, you can decrease that again as well. If you have more players and more space, look to increase it again. So, you know, we've got 14 players. Let's say you had 16 players, and you gave an extra player in the middle here, you might want to increase that again. Now, in terms of the width, okay, again, it depends on how many players that you've got, but we're looking at about 25 yards to start with, okay? And if you add more players and increase that to 30 and so forth. So the focus for the Reds, who's going to be the team attacking the goal, is that they're trying to play through, but at the same time, show some patience, okay, and look to recycle possession, because they've got to get the ball into that final third to score. So to start with, the players are going to be locked into their zones, so that we've got an overload in each in the final third and a defensive third. So when the defenders get the ball here, it's going to be a 2v1, and they're looking to recycle the ball until they get a chance to play through. So it could be that we're focusing on our players' movements off the ball. So can they create space for players to play through? Now, the ball doesn't have to go into the middle to go into the final third, and can go directly into the final third for the players to score. But obviously as well, we're going to look for those passes into here, okay, and then can we look to receive on the half turn, play a player in, okay, and we can use that 3v2 to score. Now, so we're focusing on recycling possession. So if we've got the ball here and the opposition is staying compact, it's difficult to play through. Recycle the ball, okay, so we can even play into midfield, okay. They receive it and play backwards, no time, and then if they spin off, player might follow, and then we can stretch the pitch there. So what the players got to think of is utilising, okay, the area that they got. So we need height, width and depth, okay? So making sure we've also always got players in wide areas, okay? So we're stretching the opposition, whereas if we're too narrow, okay, it becomes a lot easier for the opposition, okay, to nullify that threat, okay? Whereas if we stretch the pitch, so we have, let's say, the winger here on the far side and we have one of the midfielders, we then create space when the centre-backs have got the ball to play wide and also, okay, to play through, because we're using that overload by, you know, the centre-back might think, oh, okay, I can go out here instead. But then when they come across into there, we can receive on the back foot and go the other way. So this way we've got to bring down our communication, our scanning and our body shape when we're receiving the ball, okay, to enable ourselves to see the passes early, open out and play, okay, so making sure before we get the ball, we're assessing the situation, assessing the space, assessing where players are to then play forward. Now, when the Blues win the ball back, the Reds are also locked in. The Blues can make it 3v2 in here when they get the ball, but they have to either dribble the ball in or play into the striker for then two players to support the attack, okay, which means then it's 3v1 in there, and then they look to score. If the Reds win it back, there's an overload, break down the opposition quickly by penetrating the space, and then again playing into that final third to score. Now, progression can be that you remove the zones, okay, and players are allowed to move freely, but we don't want these players in here just dropping into this area to receive the ball all the time, okay? So we want options further up the pitch, in between the lines, okay? In between players, so occupying that space in between to force the players to make a decision. Did he come inside, leave that space wide, okay? Or did he go wide and leave that space inside, okay? So when you remove the zones, still make sure that players, okay, are stretching the pitch, giving us height, okay? Giving us the depth as well, and still doing the right things, recycling the ball and then taking risks in possession to penetrate forward. We will now move into our next animation before moving on to the final part of this week's session. Okay, now moving into the final part of this week's session, we're now moving into the second of our small-sided games, which is going to be focusing on our attacking shape, okay, and also on recycling the ball, trying to break the opposition down. Now, in terms of the setup for this part of the session, you're going to use as much width as you can, okay, because we're going to look to split the pitch into 5 areas. So you're going to have your wide areas, the half space, and the centre of the pitch. So if you have, let's say, 50 yards in total, okay, for your overall width in terms of the pitch that you're using, okay. Your centre of your pitch is going to be the bulk of what you have in terms of the area that you're going to use. So you could have, say, 20 yards central, okay, and then you have 15 either side with 10 for the wide area, 5 for the half space, but obviously we're trying to use as much width as possible. So if you have 60 and 70 yards, which is more normal for a game, then you look to increase that as well. In terms of the depth, okay, we're trying to use as close to the half pitch as you can. So you're trying to get between 50 and 60 yards. Again, just use however much you have available for you. And obviously if you have more players as well, you're going to look to increase that based on the amount of players that you've got available. So we're going to be focusing on the Reds being the attacking team. And they're focusing on breaking the Blues down by stretching the pitch. Okay, so we're talking about our height, width and depth. Once again, being patient in possession, okay, and focusing on movement off the ball to get into areas where we can look to penetrate. Now, the ball will start with the coach, okay, but you can have different start points so the team can start as well if they score, or let's say the ball goes in behind, so we can do different start points to coach from. So you can have the 2 players central, okay, your 2 fullbacks, 2 wide players and the forward. Now, the wide players can look to drift inside as well, but you want your wide players to be staying wide. However, when the ball is on the opposite side of the pitch, okay, the wide player looks to come inside to that half space, okay, so that you've got the option once we receive the ball here to recycle, go the other way. Once we received in this half space here, then can we look, okay, create a 2v1 overload, the winger can go on the outside, okay, fullback can look to drive in, and then we can get ourselves in the box in that area to look to score. Now, if you wanted to at first, you could make it an 8v6 scenario. So you could have your 2 players in here, okay, and you could even have a floater, okay, so this could be a floater. So whichever team has the ball, okay, can have the floater. So then in possession, you've got that extra player, but then it would give them an extra 2 players. Can be a little bit too easy. But if you wanted to do that at first to get some success, you can do. But then obviously try and make it even so it's more realistic to a game in terms of you've got to try and break that opposition down. Now, the opposition aim to win the ball back and score in this goal here. So slightly bigger, small-sided goal. So you want to try and make it like a 9-a-side type goal if you have one, okay, or whatever you've got, which is best fit. So we're trying to occupy these areas across the pitch, okay. But when the ball's on the opposite side, okay, this player can look to come in more centrally, okay, since we've only got 2 midfielders in here and with the numbers that we have, and obviously we look to get the fullback in the half space. But we're focusing on these players looking to combine, so that's why we're trying to stretch the pitch. So it forces the opposition out into areas where they don't want to go, and then we can receive the ball in here. Can we look to combine, or can we look to bring a defender out of their position so we can drive into space and look to score? To do this though, have to move the ball quickly, okay, we have to be focusing at all times, assessing the space, okay, that we can try and penetrate, okay, and being confident in these areas to take risks. So if a pass is on here, can we look to do it quickly, okay, into the striker's feet to look to finish, okay, because if we just go side to side for too long, the players would then become a bit tentative to actually make those passes. So you want to try and tell the players, okay, when the ball comes into these areas, okay, try and take risks. So when a player gets the ball here, drive into that final third. Don't receive it and then go backwards, okay? Can you drive in, okay? Can you commit a player, okay, for us then to receive the ball and then go into space to look to finish again? So recycle possession, okay, to work the openings, but being able to take risks, how we receive the ball, so our body shape, making sure the tempo is high as well, okay? Our height, our width, our depth, okay? So we're making sure that it's difficult for the opposition to defend against us, okay? They're trying to stay compact and frustrate us, but with us stretching the pitch out, okay, it's difficult for them. So when the ball gets across, they've got to get across, which means if we can play quickly, we can find space on the opposite side to penetrate through and then look to score. So that's one of the main things you want to relay onto the players, is being patient and also being proactive as well. So making sure we're on the front foot and we're taking the game to the opposition, not waiting for things to happen. We will now move into our final animation before concluding this week's session. Thanks for watching this week's video. Don't forget to head over to our website where you can sign up to view all our exclusive content. And we'll see you next week for another Session Sunday.